Hi, everyone. My name is Nyemade Boiwu, and I am NAMI Delaware's Diversity and Equity Fellow. And this month, we are bringing you another mental health conversation. I'm so excited. I have two great guests with me today, and they are from Project Seed here in Delaware. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about them. Hi, guys. And their names are George, George Corbin, and Garald Tatum. So if you two want to just tell everybody a little bit about yourselves.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Garald Tatum. I'm here with Newcastle County Project Seed. Project Seed is a county initiative. Essentially, we go in communities and help wherever we can. They always make fun of me. I use the word holistically, probably way too much, but any way imaginable, that's where we try and help. Probably the best job on the planet. And get to work with my friend and colleague, George Corbin. I think, even in this conversation, I guess even before you get into your questions, I'm fortunate to have him as a friend and colleague, because we're able to talk about things and bounce things off of one another. And I think that's very important when you talk about mental health and just being able to sometimes just get through the day. It's nice to be able to have somebody that you can trust, that you can talk to. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll turn it over to George.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Kind of stole one of my points I wanted to make later on, but George Corbin, again, community liaison for Project Seed, Newcastle County. Also have a nonprofit here going on for 7 years called Humble but Hungry. One thing that Mr. Tatum, we call him G, is very humble and doesn't really talk about as much as we talk about for him, is that he also retired from Newcastle County Police as a lieutenant. And those resources and those experiences that he's had over those 20 years is really how Project Seed was birthed before he retired from the police department. So in a nutshell, Delaware native, born and raised here, education background, some health and wellness and fitness. And that's kind of me in a nutshell. So appreciate you having us on. Look forward to your questions, and hopefully not only will it help us, but help others.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, both of you, for joining me today. It's June, and so I know a lot of times the fact that it's Pride Month gets a lot of attention, which we love. And actually, if you're watching this and haven't checked out our Sharing Hope community conversations for this month, it's all about the mental health impacts of coming out. So check that out on our page also. But it's also Men's Mental Health Month, which doesn't get as much attention as it should. But since 1994, June has been Men's Mental Health Month. And I know a big part of June is Father's Day. So George, you actually mentioned your nonprofit, and you do something every year around Father's Day, right?
Correct. Father's Day 5K at Glasgow Park. Yeah, just
can you share a little bit about 6.
That? Say it again.
Oh no, I said, can you just share a little bit about that? Like what caused you to start it and how it's going?
It originally started, I wanted to get as many people together to do the Thanksgiving 10K, 5K at PNC Bank, kind of in the city of Wilmington. And after that race was over, the amount of people that showed up, the excitement of what I saw leading up to and after the race, I said to my wife that we need to do more. So we literally began to brainstorm, and we turned that day into a nonprofit. And through the nonprofit, we're still all about health and wellness, scholarships, and going into the community, just trying to figure out how we can help, whether it's, giving away toiletries, food, coat drives. Pre-COVID, we were in schools a lot more than we are now, just because a lot of the schools have kind of taken on some of the things we were doing in terms of Humble but Hungry closets. They now do them themselves. But fortunately, through Project Seed, we still get to kind of do those things. So some of the neighborhoods that we work in, we also go into those schools. But in a nutshell, that's, what Humble but Hungry has been and is trying to do.
That's awesome. And, fathers, just like everyone else, experience mental health struggles, but a lot of times men feel like they have to wear that cape so they can't be vulnerable. Even though 77% of men polled do suffer from some type of anxiety or stress or depression, but 40% of them have never actually spoken to anyone about it. And 29% of those who haven't spoken said that they're too embarrassed to speak out. What are your thoughts from either of you, just especially as people who have worked with community, about just the ability of men to say everything's not great. I have a struggle. I'm feeling down. You know, like what does that conversation look like? Have you been able to have it with men in the community?
So had that conversation, like you said, it can be a difficult one. It's one that you know, as men, we want to put on this cape or this armor that we you know, we can handle all things. Personally, I've had some close family members that are currently experiencing mental health situations. And something someone told me just yesterday or the day before yesterday was that saying that you need help is one of the, I don't know if bravest is the word, but that's one of the most brave things that you can do is say that you need help. And that was true for myself. You know, I'm a father of 6 from 32 to 10. And trust me, they're all different. They're all set of challenges. With one of them having some significant challenges, you know, sometimes we look at it as, what did I do wrong? Could I have done something different? What else can I do? And as you very well know, in our communities, a lot of this is nobody knows what goes on outside of this house. Everything that goes on in this house stays there. I have a joke with a friend that when the weather gets warm, I have to make sure that the windows are closed because we don't want any of the activity that's going on in the house. We don't want any of those voices to echo outside.
Yeah.
And it's especially real when it comes to, you know, talking about mental health. So for me, again, the things that I had to do personally was kind of look at exactly, am I trying to protect myself or am I trying to help my loved one? And when I looked at it from that perspective, and also the other reality is that I needed help too. I was experiencing some things through my family member that I hadn't experienced before. I didn't know how to deal with it. And fortunately, I had people in my corner that were able to lead me to talk to other people. And through that, eventually I just became more comfortable. But I think that initial step of realizing and recognizing that I really can't do this alone, it did take some support. And again, the one thing that I try and do just in general in life is continue to surround myself around people that are positive and people that I can talk to. And that has been it put me in a place of comfort and being able to talk about these things. And then those people in turn were able to lead me in the direction where I could talk to some professionals and get help for myself and my family members that needed help and support.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And yeah, as you mentioned, that whole what happens in this house stays in this house is especially prevalent in the Black community. But sometimes you do have to go out and seek that help and seek additional information. But how can someone encourage, like if there's a man in their life that they had noticed might be struggling a little bit? We know that feeling vulnerable is not always the easiest thing. And so it leads a lot of people to not want to get that help that you mentioned needing. So what's a good way to sort of have that conversation or to persuade them to seek out additional help and let them know that that doesn't make them weak?
I think first and foremost, you know, G kind of talked about this earlier in his intro, is once you have people around you that you trust, we have to be able to change the narrative. I mean, it's kind of like, again, in the Black community, it's kind of the joke that, oh, men shouldn't cry. And as I was hearing G speak, I kind of had a flashback and remembered that, you know, you might be getting a spanking or you might be getting scolded, from a parent or a grandparent. And I remember my parent or grandparent saying, "What are you crying for?" Or, and so it's this stigma that we have to kind of break and let people know, because that is a raw emotion that's supposed to happen. We were designed, and it comes for many different reasons, and tears come from all different angles and reasons. So I think if we begin to share to answer your question, to be able to share with others that it's okay to not be okay. You begin to hopefully be vulnerable enough to be able to share your experiences that, yeah, I've gone through some stuff, or I'm currently learning how to go through some things. And I did a poll. I think we talked about this on another platform before. I did a poll a few years ago, and I was shocked at how many people responded to the question of, when I asked, is it okay for men to cry? And there were a lot of people on my comments that were saying, men shouldn't cry. We weren't designed to be that way. So when you have people that think that way, and you have this stereotype that if you cry, you're soft or you're not a man, that you create more of those people within your circle. You might cause someone to now not want to share. So again, to answer your question, you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be honest with them, and truly let them know that, again, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to get help. It's okay if you can't make it today. Like, we put so much pressure on people. Why aren't you here? No, you know what? I needed a mental health day. My pastor says it often. He has I'm going to call in well. Nope, I'm not sick. I'm not going to call in and lie and say I'm sick. No, I'm going to call in well. And it's going to be my mental health day for me to do what I want to do that day. So you got to have people around you that are going to give that honesty to you. And when we meet people in the community, we're transparent in that way. When we meet with our parents, we meet with our mentees, we share that with them to let them know, like, it's okay that you don't have all the answers. Don't feel like you failed as a parent. Don't feel like this is the end of the road. We just got to figure out how to navigate around this bush. We got to figure out how to get over this pothole, because that's what it is. Like, we just gotta, it's just a little bumps in the road, but we treat these bumps sometimes and we sometimes build them up to be bigger than what they are because of how we've been raised. And we take so much. Like, you take enough pebbles and little rocks and put them in a bag, you put enough of them in that bag, it'll weigh you down. So even myself, it took me for years when I finally, not too long ago, said to my wife, like, yo, this is a lot. Like, what I was doing during that week, I never uttered those words, but I finally said to her, like, yo, this is a lot. And just by me sharing it and saying it, it was almost like okay, now she knows in the house that, yo, I got 20,000 things that I'm kind of dealing with right now. And normally I just go about my normal every day, but it's okay to say, you know what, it's a lot. I'm tired. Like, this is heavy. And when we can trust those people around us, and I think that's the major thing. I think people have been burnt and abused by so many folks that you're not even willing to kind of even share, because you're afraid they're going to take what you say and to the wrong people. So that's key.
Yeah, absolutely. And having that group, as you both mentioned, or having someone to go to speak with that you feel comfortable is huge, and just the beginnings of you feeling better, letting things out. And it's unfortunate, that so many people still have such a negative stigma around mental health and mental illness, when it is something a lot of people deal with. Like, 1 in 5 people have a mental health either issue or concern, and it's not always a lifetime thing. Sometimes it's a moment. Sometimes you're going through something for a period of time, but 1 in 5 is a lot for comparing to how many people say they're perfectly fine and nothing's going on, So if someone is watching this, or if other leaders are watching this, what are some ways that they can try to create like a safe environment for people for men specifically, to have those conversations, either from a leader viewpoint, or even just like as friends? Like, how do you get like your homies to open up to you without feeling like, oh, he's trying to, get in my business or anything?
I think, and I was, as George was talking, I was thinking about it. And one of the things we talked about earlier today was, and it wasn't specifically about mental health, but it was about just the work that we do. And it was about being present. So when you're present in people's lives, people, they get to know you. There's a certain understanding, there's a certain level of trust and a certain level of confidence. One thing that, and we continued and we talked about things that we would do to encourage people in our personal lives, but I'm sorry, in our professional lives. But when you talk about that, you talk about getting to know people. So if I see somebody and I just say, hey man, how you doing? Give them 5, keep it moving. There's this, I guess, superficial knowledge of who we are, and I kind of keep it moving. But I don't know, sometimes if you take 5 seconds to say, how you doing? How's everything with you today? Sometimes that's all it takes, is that additional question where that person says, oh man, you know what? I've talked to them, and we just talked about this today, about a young man that had been working for a number of years and nobody ever asked him how he was doing. He was always the one that led that conversation, was checking on other people, and just, kind of probably getting rather burnt out behind it. And George, and his insight and discernment, saw it that, let me just check on him and ask him how he's doing. And I think not just, for some people that, when you meet them initially, it might take a couple times to warm up. But I personally, I feel like, just like when you go into a room and you can really feel that tension, it's like people say you can feel tension. Like, I think you can feel and you can tell when somebody's being genuine enough or not. And I think, through your relationships and being present in people's lives, I think that goes a long way to make them feel comfortable about sharing things that are going on in their life. And additionally, I think you can follow that up with, look, either it's okay if you want to talk to me later about it, but if they need that trust from you verbally that says, you can trust me, this isn't going anywhere, or what have you, anything like that to support them and put their mind at ease. Because again, sometimes we just need those positive affirmations. And then once we get that affirmation, we're off to the races with all this information. Again, and I'll probably make these correlations throughout this call with my family member. We had this discussion. They said that they weren't feeling well. It's my family member, so of course I care about them. And what do you mean by that? I could have just let it go, but I chose to ask that additional question. And through that additional question, they gave me a litany of things that were going on, such that they needed to get immediate assistance behind that. And, if we don't have that concern, and if we don't have that presence in each other's lives where, certain moments are very important, they literally can be life or death moments. And, we have to act on that and be, I guess, compassionate enough to understand and be that present in people's lives to, just to be there for them. So I kind of rambled, but again, I think being present, being open, and assuring the individual, I think those go a long way to supporting them and helping them to be able to express what their needs and concerns are with you.
Yeah, that was great, and not a ramble at all. That was great. You mentioned trust, and I can't think of any relationship where trust is more important than one between a parent and a child. Something that I love that Project Seed does, you work a lot with different people in the community, but also with parents. So when we talk about men's mental health, before you're a man, you're a boy. What are some good ways for fathers to have the conversations with their sons about being open about their mental health, about, George, you mentioned people said, men don't cry, it's not in our DNA, which is not true. So as we try to progress and change the narrative as a father to a son, what are some ways that conversation can happen?
G touched on them. I think some of the things is just literally being present. I think one of the things I always stress, to parents is that we don't they don't allow the child to speak and share. Like you have to give them their opportunity, just like we do. We have our moments where I trust G, where it's certain things that I can vent to him. I know it's not going to leave that conversation. Parents have to be the same way sometimes. And what the child may be saying might be completely wrong, but we're so quick to say, I don't want to hear it. You're going to do what and when you continue for years and years to say, I don't want to hear it. You got to do, I don't want to hear it. They don't know how to express themselves. So even through, the how they display it, it's still teaching. It's still showing. So fathers have to do the same thing with their sons. Allow them to be wrong. Like there's a day when you finally take the training wheels off, and the first couple rides, they might fall, but we don't say, you're not ready, and put the training wheels back on. We say, nah, this is what you did wrong. This is how we try to correct it. We put a helmet on them. We try to do these things to prepare them for life. And I think that as fathers, we, especially with our sons, have to have the conversation. Like there's certain things that I say to my grandson because I know eventually he's going to be an adult. And it's things that he now can begin to pay attention and learn at 3 years old. And one of the things is, you'll never hear me say, I'm never going to say, yo, what are you crying for in that manner? It has to be, as G said, if someone says, I'm bothered or this, like, I'm not one of the people that you can't say to me, oh, that bothered me. And I'm like, it shouldn't have bothered you, because that has been said to me before. And that's how we create these people later on that are dealing with depression, that don't know how to, be sympathetic or even operate with empathy, because they've been so closed off. If you're talking years and years and years of this, who do I go to? Because your first go-to is at home. Like that first go-to is mom or dad or grandmom or auntie, whoever you're closest to. So if that person is always like, I don't want to hear it, that's what we create. So first and foremost, I always stress, just listen. And you might not have all the answers. You might not have the answer, period. Like there's been parents where we have to connect them with another agency for them to get the things, the services that, they need. But let's start with listening, and let's start with responding in a way that everybody can grow. Like everybody can definitely grow from the situation, but especially as we're talking about this month, our fathers, to these boys, and our fathers to other fathers, like that men-to-men relationship. Like we have to be able to have these men's group. I just said to my pastor a couple of days ago, look at your calendar. It's time for the men to get together and talk as men. Like we need to sit in a room and chop it up like the ladies do. The ladies got their outing going. Like they on the calendar. We're going to Poconos. We're going here. We're going there. Men, we like, yeah, well, I'll see. No, it's equally as important for us to sit around and say, bro, I got you. You need me, call me. And it's okay if you're struggling with something. That's the thing that we really have to emphasize to each other and to the youngins. Like it's okay. Now let's teach and show how we get through that. I told my daughter when she went to college, this is what you're going to learn in college: time management and how to navigate the personalities that you're going to come in contact with. The schoolwork, yeah, that might be tough, but you're going to learn how to navigate through this is how that professor is different from this professor. This roommate is different from that roommate. That's the things you're going to learn in college. Okay, that's not due for 6 weeks, but it don't mean wait until week 5 to do so. So those are the things that we got to have these real conversations with our youth. And that's why we love really talking to youth, because, let's face it, some people, when they get to adults, it's like, man, you might be kind of set in your ways. We're still here to help, but we really try to, change the narrative with the youth.
Yeah, absolutely. The earlier you can get them, the better. So that's always helpful. G, you mentioned, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Are you sure?
I was just going to say real quick to his point. My youngest son is 10. So of course I'm much older than that. Old school. And, if somebody says do something, you do it. Well, why? Because I said so. So, and not saying that I, I guess, managed the house like that. But there were times when I would look at him as a 8, 9-year-old, and he's trying to express himself, and I would prohibit that expression. Like I was stopping him. And one day, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year ago, he was like, "Daddy, I just need you to listen to me. Please, I need you to listen." And his voice, you know, if you took it out of context, it might have been a one where you thought he was hollering at me, but he was really reaching out for help. He was really asking and pleading for me to listen to him. And trust me, I'm not going to take all the credit for this. It took me, it took my wife, talking to Corb and other people to say, look, man, like, just because you've done things or things were done a certain way doesn't mean that that's the way it really should be. And now I really am starting to see a change in him, the way he expresses himself, the way that he comes to me and will, you know, divulge certain things. He just called me, I don't know, 4 or 5 times before we got on this call about something. And I can't say that he would have done that before, because he probably thought I would have been, you know, maybe getting irritated behind it. But now I think that there's a level of openness there. And I'm proud that I was encouraged by, I had a group of people again that surrounded me and was like, no, man, you need to start looking at it this way. So sometimes it does take, even as an older gentleman, you know, we're still learning, and I'm fortunate that I have some people around me that support me and provides a good sense of direction for me in terms of that. So that's
great for your son and for you. And, you know, as Corbin mentioned, sometimes when people are older, they're stuck in their ways. So for you to make that change for what your son needed is actually really important. And it's great because sometimes it's hard for people in general, but also guys, to change it, because it's like, well, this is how it worked for me, so this is how it's gonna work for you. So I love hearing that. So that's great. I was going to ask you as well, you mentioned that with your family member, you had an emergency situation. I think that's one of the hardest things to go through, is realizing, I mean, just the situation in general, but also having to reach out to get help, whether it's law enforcement or crisis intervention people, because you're worried about how that family member will be taken care of, but will also feel about you, committing them or bringing in legal help, whatever the situation is and how it's resolved. So what are some things that made you say, like, this is an emergency where it needs to be taken to that level? And then how did you reconcile that within yourself, going to get that outside help, knowing there's a chance it might impact your relationship?
You know, for me, you know, you see these changes in your family member, and you kind of notice things are, you know, they're kind of going wrong, and you're fighting it. You're like, no, it's not. We can handle this. We can work through this. And, you know, it gets to a point where I think I talked about a little bit earlier, but you look at it and you say, like, look, I don't see any way out of this other than to get some help. And in terms of how they felt about it, I was comfortable knowing that I was doing the best thing for them that I could at that time. When a family member says to you that, you know, they're no longer interested in living, or, you know, they don't know if they want to live anymore, things like that. I tell you, it probably was like I don't know, just a switch went off, and I went into doing what I had to do. And from that moment until this moment presently, because sometimes things are cyclical. They're doing better and then they're not. So you may be going through some of the same situations repetitively or over and over again. But the thing that I keep in mind is that whatever decision I'm making, it's to benefit them. And I think the one thing that has been shared with me and then I've shared with others is that there are some times when some of the things that are said, you could take them as personal, and it might, you might not feel good about it. And it doesn't make you feel good. But if you're able to somehow reconcile the fact that it's the disease and not that person, that really helps you to try and really get in there and to really get to that person. And just being, transparent. I spoke with somebody yesterday, again, to help me through the situation with my loved one. And nobody had ever done this. And I was so thankful. And, I told them, I was like, look, nobody's ever done this. But what they did was they said, I want you to tell me about those good things about that person. I want you to tell me all those great things about that person. When they're not going through these situations, when they're not in this state of mind, tell me all those good things that you love about them. And when I started thinking about them, my wife's thinking about them, we're talking about them, that's something else that is really encouraging, because you know what? You're like, yeah, you know what? They really are all these other things. This one thing, if you lump it all together, it's this one thing, it's this disease. But there's so many other positive things. And when you start to focus on that and focus on bringing those things out of them, you begin to get more and more encouraged. I forget the second part of what you were asking me, the second part of the question. I'm sorry.
It was just, how do you reconcile putting someone in an emergency situation, knowing that it might impact your relationship?
Yeah, and ultimately, and I think that they recognize it too, really, like in that moment when they're in that state, there's resentment and there's a lot of things that's going on. But at the end of the day, if you have this loving relationship, I really, and not to put it to you any other way, we're a spiritual family, we're a loving family, and that love, I think, really does supersede all. So when you really break it down and get to the crux of the matter, that love is really what matters. So I know you're probably going to be mad and upset with me, maybe for a week. But after that, I know things are going to come around. We're going to talk about the things that are positive, and that's what we're going to focus on. So I think just being comfortable in knowing that what you're trying to do is going to benefit that person. And ultimately, it's going to benefit the rest of the family too, because if they're doing well, we're all doing well. And that knowledge, I think, really, really helps you to be comfortable with doing what you need to do. But the bottom line is, and I think this is for most of us that care, we're going to do anything for our families. We really are. And, that's just what we do. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, I can't thank you both enough for joining me today and for your transparency and sharing a little bit of your wisdom. Before I let you go, is there anything either of you would like to share, a final message, a final thought about mental health in general, or specifically men's mental health?
Only thing I'll just close out and say is what's somewhat been said. And again, just pay attention. People don't always ask for help verbally. They might not know how to express it, and also understand that what you might be seeing is also the byproduct of some layers that you have to get to. So, you know, I have this kind of saying that I say to my folks is that, yo, we could start out on this journey together, and it might take me to the West Coast first, and it might take you to the East Coast. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're on the wrong path. It just means you just had to take a different one, or I had to take a different one, and we have no judgment with that. So let's just realize that just because, even if we're in an addiction together, just because you are now doing better and I'm not, it doesn't mean that we now look at each other differently. So I just say, like, understand, pay attention, because the signs in some way are there. And it doesn't mean that if you see it, you have to respond in such a way that causes them to want to go back in the shell. And then once you do begin to peel back them layers, like, it takes time. It takes time. It takes some tears. It takes some prayers. It takes time.
Certainly, certainly. G,
I
anything to
just
add?
wanted to, no, just really just to thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I'm relieved to talk about some of these things. I haven't talked about these things a lot. So again, it's relatively new for us as a family, but I think, and I guess the last thing I would say is, you know, we both talked about it already, but truly being present in your loved ones' lives. You know, I think there's something to be said in some level of comfort when you're just in a room and you might be on your phone and they're on their phone. I'm not saying that that's unacceptable, but there are times when you're going to have to, like, ask some questions and check on people, and then respond to what they tell you in the appropriate manner. They tell you something that's concerning, then it's probably concerning. We need to be, you know, cognizant of that, and be able to react to that. But again, thank you for your time. Great talk, and
Absolutely.
thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. And then one last thing before I let you go, is there any projects coming up with Project Seed that you want to let the people know about? And if they want to reach out to you or to find out more about Project Seed, how can they do that?
Project Seed on Facebook, Instagram. We do have some things coming up in the community. I wish I could drop a date right now, but we're literally, it was a rain date event that's now being pushed back to August. So as soon as
the tournament, right?
Look at you, you on it. So yeah, so that's going to turn into maybe more of a community day, even more. So you know, again, you know, we're both of the faith, so we know no door closed or open is prohibiting the work. So though it was rained out in that instance, we know that it's meant to be on another date. So so yeah, that date is coming soon. And then again, if anybody ever wants to reach out in any communities or and such, that, you know, we're always available. You can find us on, you know, Newcastle County in terms of email. And again, we're Project Seed Delaware on social media.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you again, both of you, so much for giving me your time and your insight. It's much appreciated. Thank you for anybody who is watching this later. I appreciate your time as well. If you haven't seen some of the other videos we have, please check them out. They've been some great interviews on great topics, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.